I uncovered my inheritance during Thanksgiving. Then my family turned against me. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I didn't expect the first hiss to sound like a secret shared in a church. "You stole our future," Victor said, breath warm with bourbon and gravy, fingers flat on Grandma Ruth's polished dining table. By the time forks settled and the green bean casserole stopped trembling, I realized everyone was looking at me like I had unwrapped a weapon instead of an envelope. "My name is Nora. I'm a community librarian. I can shelve chaos and find truth with a scanner and a smile. I live in a rented one-bedroom with secondhand furniture and a plant that keeps forgiving me for forgetting the watering can. Books have rules. Families pretend to, until the wills come out. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be our soft landing after a hard year. First holiday without Grandma. She died in September, a quiet day where the light felt square and thin. She made lists for everything. How to thaw pie crusts, which quilts went to which neighbor kids, who got the flour sifter that always squeaked. Nothing fancy, she told me in June, patting my hand. Just do the right thing, honey. I thought the right thing meant labeling Tupperware and pretending the empty chair didn't swallow the room. Victor, my mother's brother, arrived in a blazer that looked rented from a better man. His son, Cole, followed with that restless athlete energy that has nowhere to go at 32 except into his jaw. Cole hugged me in a way that pinned my arms, then said, "You still at the library? Cute." I'm used to the joke. I don't need much. Grandma used to say that made me dangerous, because people who don't need much can't be bought. The envelope came with the turkey. Actually, it came with the courier who walked through the side door like he'd been invited, asking for Nora Allen with a precise Midwestern R. He handed me a thin, weighted packet and a pen to sign for it. The room quieted so fast I heard the clock cough. I tore the strip, and a letter slid out on heavy paper with a seal I recognized from the county recorder's office. My stomach tucked itself into a suitcase and waited for directions it could trust. Before I read it, Victor raised his glass. "To our shared legacy," he said, smiling at the silverware. I hadn't read a word yet, but I already felt something shift, like the floorboards decided to remember the river underneath the house. Every job teaches you what to do when the ground moves. In mine, you get the index right before you start searching. Then Victor leaned in and whispered, "You stole our future, Nora. Now give it back." Grandma Ruth loved systems the way other people loved music. She color-coded recipe cards, paid bills early, and kept every receipt in a cigar tin that used to belong to my grandfather. God rest his mule-stubborn soul. She could mend anything except the part of the family that always tore at the seams whenever money wandered into the conversation. Growing up, I slept at her farmhouse most weekends while Mom pulled double shifts. Grandma would wrap my hair in a towel and tell me stories about neighbors who shared eggs during the winter of '78, and about Victor borrowing her truck and returning it with a dent that just happened. At the table, she always served Victor first, not because she preferred him, but because she knew he'd complain if she didn't. At school, I learned to catalog. With Grandma, I learned to read silences. When she got sick last spring, she started talking in short sentences, as if words were coins she needed to spend carefully. She made me copy down passwords, names of 2 tellers at the county bank, and a reminder to check the second drawer in the blue hutch, the one that sticks. I didn't check. It felt like snooping. Instead, I brought her mail, skimmed insurance forms, and read aloud the obituaries, because she said it made her feel like she knew where everyone had gone. Last Thanksgiving, Victor joked that I'd inherit the paperwork, while he and Cole took the real assets. Cole winked and asked if the library offered employee discounts on old maps that might be worth something. Grandma's eyebrow did the thing that meant enough, but she still poured Victor the last of the sweet tea. Afterward, in the kitchen, she pressed a slice of pecan pie into my hand and said, "You don't need much, but you deserve protection." I turned it into a prayer by accident, the way you do when you don't know you'll need it. The family expectation was simple math. Victor was the only son. Therefore, the house, the land, the valuables went to him. Cole had plans for a home gym in the barn, as if sweat could convert a mortgage into loyalty. I accepted my ordinary life happily. I shelve mysteries. I don't demand to be one. But even I felt the sting when Aunt Marla, Victor's ex, laughed last year and said, "Nora never wanted anything. so she'll get a thank you card. That was the fresh wound that never scabbed, right up until the courier arrived and the room counted my breaths. Then Cole's smile slipped like butter, and everyone waited for me to confess. The first odd thing didn't look like a clue. It looked like dessert. A pumpkin pie labeled apple sat cooling near the back porch window, where Grandma always put baked things so they could inhale November. I moved it to make space for rolls and saw the label peel at the corner. Underneath was a tiny brass key taped to the tin, the kind you see in advertisements for banks that still dress their vaults. I pressed my thumb against the tape and felt the fragile stubbornness of paper that has waited for the right eyes. In the living room, Victor spoke in hushed tones to Cole, their heads bowed over his phone like it was holy. I caught, "Courier," and "just stick to the plan." Plans are funny creatures. They don't ask what you want. They ask who you are when someone else wants something. I tucked the key into my cardigan pocket and told myself it was probably for the tool shed. I told myself lots of things. Grandma loved secrets in the way a quilter loves surprise fabrics. The courier's envelope was probably some bureaucratic condolence. Victor's toast meant nothing. That's the thing about doubt. It's polite until you ask it to leave. The envelope had a seal from the county recorder, crisp and blue. Inside, a letter addressed to me in Ms. Patel's tidy loops. Please bring identification to review documents concerning the Ruth Allen Living Trust, amended. The word amended made my chest thrum like a machine in the next room. A timestamp sat in the corner, notarized August 28th, 2 weeks before Grandma passed. I could hear her then, the way she sounded when she was satisfied with a crease in a bedspread. Precise, final. I set the letter down and went out onto the porch to breathe. The farm smelled like hay and cold apples. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I declined. It rang again. Cole stepped outside, arms crossed. "Everything okay, Nora?" He looked at the pocket where the key pressed a small promise against the knit. I said, "Just needed air," and walked back inside like a book you put down before the twist. Grandma had a handwriting that could cut paper. Tidy, slanted, unafraid. It stared up at me from a safe deposit receipt tucked into a church newsletter by the phone. The box number matched the first 3 digits printed in Ms. Patel's letter. I wasn't ready to believe. Belief makes you visible. Then Victor's phone lit up with a bank logo, and he smiled at me. Dinner slid into place like a scene everyone had rehearsed in private. Victor stood, glass lifted, voice warm as varnish. "To our shared legacy," he said, eyes shiny with a generosity that didn't reach me. People laughed, because that's the price of admission in families like ours. I was still holding the letter, and I could feel the weight of the notary's stamp through the paper, as if legitimacy has texture. The doorbell rang. Not the chime we grew up with, but a clipped double tone that Grandma installed when she decided her front door needed boundaries. A courier stepped in with cold air attached to him. "Allen residence. Delivery for Nora Allen." Victor's smile stalled. Cole's chair scraped. I signed, hands steady from a decade of checking out rare books to people who swear they'll return them. The envelope was too formal to be kind. I opened it at the table because secrets hate witnesses. Inside, a notice of filing, a request to contact Ms. Patel's office for acknowledgement of trust amendment receipt, and a small index card with Grandma's familiar ink. Second drawer of blue hutch. Pie tin is a decoy. Don't let anyone rush you. Her humor, her edge, the way she protected me while teasing me. I almost cried right there between the candied yams and the heirloom salt shaker shaped like a duck. Victor clapped, a single sharp note. "Let's see it," he said. He held out his hand. When I didn't move, he dropped the smile. We should all be transparent in a moment like this. Cole stood, blocking the path to the hallway. He smelled like aftershave and impatience. "Don't be dramatic," he said softly, like a threat wrapped in concern. I pictured Grandma at this very table, measuring flour by feel. She always said, "There's a difference between being polite and being honest." I folded the letter and put it in my pocket next to the tiny key. "I'll call MS. Patel in the morning," I said. Victor leaned so close I could count the red veins in his eyes. "We're family," he said, and the word family sounded like a lock clicking. Then he lifted the tablecloth and reached for my pocket like it was his. The room turned into a stage set. Faces arranged, props shining, exits blocked. Cole's palm landed on the doorway trim near my shoulder. Casual in the way a gate can look casual. Victor only needed me to make one mistake. If I flinched, I'd be the problem. If I stood still, I'd be the obstacle. I heard Grandma's clock tick, and I thought about the way she used to say, "Take the count, then act." I squared my shoulders and said, "I'm taking these to Ms. Patel." Victor laughed without sound. "Ms. Patel works for the estate," he said, "which is all of us." "She works for the law," I replied, "and the law works for the dead." That landed between us like a dropped plate. My phone buzzed, unknown number, again. I answered and stepped past Cole to the porch. "Nora Allen," a woman said. "This is Lila from Patel and Green. We received confirmation the amendment was served. Please do not share documents until we verify chain of custody." I breathed a thank you that sounded like relief, trying to be brave. "Also," she added, "check your grandmother's blue hutch, second drawer. There should be a notarized copy and a bank key." I touched my pocket and felt the tiny brass promise introducing itself as evidence. Back inside, I headed for the dining room corner where the blue hutch squatted like a quiet witness. The second drawer stuck exactly where Grandma said it would, like a memory you tug until it comes free with a sigh. Inside, a plain envelope, a safe deposit access card, and a photocopy of a trust amendment with August 28th in the corner. 2 church ladies signed as witnesses. The notary stamp looked like a sunrise. Victor hovered. "We'll all go to the bank," he announced. "Tomorrow," I said, "during business hours." "Tonight," he said, as if the night could make things kinder. "The bank is closed," I answered, which is what you say when someone asks for an impossible thing to see how far you'll bend. Cole shifted his weight, eyes on the envelope like it was a loose thread he could pull until I unraveled. Then the porch light died, and I heard the back door unlatch in the dark. I locked the back door and stood still until the house remembered me. The porch light stayed dead, but in the dark, the plan sharpened. Tomorrow, first thing, the bank, then Ms. Patel's office, then county records. I took Grandma's safe deposit card and pressed it flat under my palm like a promise. Victor paced the hall. Cole tested windows with the distracted confidence of someone who thinks rules are for other people. I texted my neighbor to feed my cat if I didn't come home by noon and slid the hutch drawer closed with a soft wooden prayer. In the guest room, I photographed the amendment copy and the access card. I spoke a date into my voice memos so my memory would have a spine. Thanksgiving, 7:43 p.m. Noticed porch light failure, documents intact. When you work with archives, you learn that records aren't just proof. They're anchors that keep stories from floating into whatever someone wants them to be. Victor tapped the door. "Family meeting," he called. I opened to find him smiling with teeth that belonged to a dashing version of himself. "We'll go together in the morning." "Bank opens at 9, I said. "We can all be there at 9. He studied my face the way a gambler studies a hand he doesn't like. "Good girl," he said, which was a mistake. I slept on the couch with my shoes on and Grandma's quilt over my shoulders. At 6:40 a.m., I left before the coffee finished sighing. Frost scrolled itself across the fields. A church sign promised a bake sale and mercy. In the parking lot of First Prairie Bank, I watched the tellers unlock the door, then texted Ms. Patel, arriving to access safe deposit box. "Will request private room. Please confirm chain of custody steps." Her reply came fast. "Yes. Ask for Linda or Tom. Do not permit copies. Photograph only the access log." Victor's SUV swung into the lot 2 minutes later. Cole hopped out, cheerful like a bouncer at noon. "Road trip," he said. "You don't have to make this harder," I answered, because passwords work best when they're true. At the counter, the teller looked at my card and said, "Ms. Allen, follow me, please." The vault smelled like pennies and old ink. In the private room, Linda slid a metal box onto the table with the care of a nurse lowering a newborn. Victor leaned against the wall as if walls could be impressed. Cole cracked his knuckles softly. I handed over my ID and the access card. Linda compared signatures, then rotated the log for me to view. There it was, August 28th, Ruth Allen. 2 witnesses, and a second entry the same day, Ms. Patel's paralegal, initialed with a tidy PNG. No Victor. No Cole. No one else. I took photographs of the log and the envelope inside the box. On top, Grandma's handwriting. "Nora, if you're reading this, you did the hard part and showed up." My throat tightened. I didn't open the letter yet. I lifted the rest of the contents. a photocopy of the trust amendment, a notarized memorandum of gift for the farmhouse contents with exceptions listed, and an index card divided into 3 lines. Education fund, roof repair account, community grant trigger if Victor demands cash. Let's see, Victor said, palm up. Linda's eyebrows climbed. Only the authorized box holder may handle contents, she said. She's family, Victor replied. Policy, Linda said, a word that landed like a well-placed bookend. I signed the acknowledgement of inspection and asked for copies of nothing. I put everything back exactly as found, except the sealed letter, which I slipped into my folder. I could feel Cole watching the way a crow watches shiny things. Outside, in the cold light, Victor said, "We'll swing by the courthouse." Recorder's office, I corrected. I have to verify the filing stamps. He laughed. You're going to make us do this the slow way? I smiled. We're going to do this the right way. At the county building, the clerk wore a sweater with pumpkins and the permanent expression of someone who has seen it all twice. She pulled the microfilm drawer, threaded it, and let me read the trust amendment header. Ruth Allen Living Trust. Amendment 4. Effective August 28th. Beneficiaries listed. Conditions attached. You can purchase certified copies, she said, or you can note the index number for counsel. I wrote the number carefully. Victor's jaw flexed once. Then he whispered to Cole. We changed tactics at dinner. Back at the farmhouse, I finally opened Grandma's sealed letter at the kitchen table. Her handwriting felt like a hand on my back. Nora, if you're reading this, I made the choice I promised you as a girl. You kept every promise you made. The house stays in the family if you guard it from appetites. I left conditions because money without conditions ruins our people. Education fund first. Roof repair second. If Victor pressures you, the trust releases a community grant to the library endowment. That's my insurance. Love, Ruth. I read it twice, then a third time, the way you read instructions before defusing something with a timer. I walked the rooms, checking windows, touching photographs. The barn smelled like sleep and hay. In the pantry, behind the jars, I found a slim folder labeled in Grandma's black marker, Victor Loans. Inside were IOUs, repayment schedules, and 3 canceled checks marked gift to avoid further enabling. 2 notes were recent, spring and early summer, each with a scribbled apology from Victor. When I returned to the dining room, Victor and Cole were already seated. Victor drummed his fingers. So, he asked. So the amendment exists, I said, and it's valid. Cole leaned back. Amendment can be changed, he said. Not after death, I replied. That's what living means in the trust's name. Victor smiled like a man who thinks he sees a shortcut. Or, he said, we can agree as a family to a settlement. A family settlement could void the conditions if I signed. If I caved, Grandma's endowment trigger might not fire. I pictured the library's broken HVAC rumbling in August, the students sweating over test prep books. I pictured the roof tarps flapping over the farmhouse bedroom where Grandma kept her quilts folded like hymns. I wanted to be generous. I also wanted to be obedient to a woman who had taught me how to keep promises without making enemies I couldn't afford. Victor tapped the table and said, Sign tonight, Nora, or we make this very public. I texted Ms. Patel from the bathroom with the fan on. He's pushing for a family settlement, I wrote, threatening to make it public. Her dots appeared, then her reply. Do not sign anything. Gather proof, photos, receipts, box log, recorder index, IOUs. We'll set a meeting with a neutral mediator. Invite them. Transparency helps. I photographed everything and zipped copies into a cloud folder named after a cookbook so I could find it later without advertising it. I also left a voicemail for Tom at the bank. Please confirm access log entries for August 28th. I'll need your written statement that there were no other visitors. Tom called back 5 minutes later, his voice the calm of someone who has seen worse. I'll prepare a letter for counsel, he said. We can confirm entries and timestamps. I thanked him with my whole ribcage. When I stepped out, Aunt May, my mother's sister, long divorced from our family dramas, was in the hallway holding a tray of coffee. You look like you found the fuse box, she said. I did. I answered and told her the short version. She listened, jaw set, then said, You know Ruth always meant you to keep your spine. I'll sit near the door. At the table, I laid out my plan. We'll meet at Ms. Patel's office tomorrow at 3. There will be a mediator and a conference screen to view the filings. I will not sign tonight. Victor laughed. You don't get to schedule us. I get to invite you, I said. That's polite. Cole spread his hands. Or we just take what's in the house now. I nodded toward Aunt May, who had already dialed 911 on her unlocked phone. Tomorrow at 3, I repeated, or I file for an injunction in the morning. Victor staged a vote at dinner anyway. He stood at the head of the table, fork tapping a glass like this was a wedding and not a siege. All in favor of a fair split, he asked. Hands rose like weeds. Aunt May didn't move. Neither did I. Democracy, Victor said, as if the word could change a deed. I kept my voice steady. Legal instruments aren't subject to your show of hands. Cole grinned. He had my folder in his lap. He must have lifted it while I was on the phone. He thumbed the corner. Casual. These yours? He asked. Aunt May coughed sharply. Put that back, Cole. He shrugged and stood, tipping the papers toward the candlelight. I pictured August 28th like a rope I could hold. Grandma, Ms. Patel's paralegal, the notary stamp. Sit down, I said, the voice I use at work when teenagers try to reshelve judicial records out of boredom. He didn't. My phone lit up with MS. Patel's name. I put her on speaker. I have filed a notice of appearance, she said, calm as a ruler. Any attempt to coerce a signature tonight will be noted for the court. Victor hissed. You brought a lawyer to Thanksgiving? Grandma brought the law to Thanksgiving when she signed in August, I said. Ms. Patel continued. We'll expect you at 3 tomorrow. If not, we proceed with an injunction by end of day. Cole placed my folder on the table with a little bow. Tomorrow then, he said, but as people stood, he slid one paper under his plate. Aunt May caught the movement, plucked the plate up, and retrieved the page like a magician revealing a dove. No, she said, tucking it into her cardigan. Her hand trembled after, but her eyes did not. Victor leaned close enough for me to smell his anger and whispered, You think you've won anything yet? Morning brought a sky the color of erasers. I spent the hours until 3 labeling digital files. Banklog _ August 28. JPG, recorder index _ 1125. TXT, IO _ Victor _ Spring. PDF. I printed nothing. I brewed tea and failed to drink it. Aunt May drove me to Ms. Patel's office because hands shake less when someone else is steering. The conference room looked like a polite threat. Glass table, small camera, speakerphone waiting near a legal pad. Ms. Patel entered with a mediator named Jordan, whose voice was all soft edges and strict lines. Victor and Cole arrived 2 minutes late. Victor wore sorrow like cologne. Jordan laid ground rules. One person talks at a time. Evidence speaks without interruption. This is a voluntary discussion. I nodded, grateful for sentences that made room for oxygen. Ms. Patel projected the timeline. Ruth Allen executed Trust Amendment 4 on August 28th, she said. Witnesses present, notary verified, safe deposit access logged, recorder index noted. She clicked through photos, the vault log, the amendment header, the sealed letter addressed to me, the index card with conditions. Victor stared at the ceiling. Cole stared at me. We propose, Ms. Patel continued, that Nora will administer per conditions, education fund, roof repair, community grant trigger if Victor pressures. She will not liquidate the house. Distributions, if any, will be in writing with receipts. Victor laughed. There it is, the shaming clause. Jordan held up a hand. Please respond to the facts first. Victor's smile thinned. Facts can be arranged, he said. Ms. Patel changed the slide to an audio file labeled Ruth _ voicemail _ September 01. M4A. Grandma's voice filled the room. Nora, honey, it's Ruth. Just confirming Ms. Patel got the amendment copies and that you'll keep the house quiet and useful. If Victor yells, you let him tire out. The library needs a cooling system before July. I love you. The audio ended and left a softness that made me want to stand up and leave with it. Ms. Patel tapped the table gently. Motivation, she said. Ruth's stated purposes, stability for Nora's home, education support for local kids, and a conditional grant to the library should there be undue pressure. She switched to the IOU scan. Victor, these amounts are not small. Your mother documented them because she believed clarity is kindness. Victor's mask slipped. She gave me those, he snapped. Gifts, Ms. Patel said. Then stop calling them debts you're owed. Cole leaned forward. Nora doesn't even want the house, he said. She rents. She likes simple. Why not split it? We can flip the barn and put in a gym, give back to the community. Jordan spoke quietly. That's not how probated instruments operate. Cole rolled his eyes. Victor stood, hands flat on the glass. We'll contest, he said. On what grounds? Miss Patel asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. I felt relief and grief twist together like rope. I hadn't won anything. I'd only agreed to do a hard job in public. Ms. Patel slid a final document across the table, a written summary of terms I could accept without surrendering the trust's spine. I read, initialed, and dated. Victor refused to touch a pen. Cole stared at the camera like it might grant him better odds. Victor pointed at me and said, "If you do this, Nora, I'll take you down with me." The paperwork rippled outward like a stone tossed into a shallow lake. Ms. Patel filed a notice with the court and a letter requesting that anyone attempting to interfere refrain pending mediation. I received a voicemail from Human Resources at the library. 2 patrons had complained that they didn't feel safe around me because an online post, anonymous, of course, called me a thief. The post repeated Victor's words almost verbatim. I typed a short response for my director. I would be present for my next shift, I would not discuss family matters at work, and I would follow policy. A process server arrived at my apartment that evening with a friendly request to meet again. Ms. Patel called it what it was, a pressure tactic, not yet a suit. She prepared an injunction draft anyway. Aunt May brought soup and set a small lamp on my windowsill like a lighthouse for tired bones. I slept lightly, waking to every car door on the street. 2 days later, the courthouse posted the docket calendar. Victor had filed a motion to compel disclosure of all contested documents. Jordan emailed that the motion was premature. Ms. Patel attached the certified amendment copy to her answer like a seatbelt click. Meanwhile, the library AC wheezed, and a middle schooler named Jaden asked if the scholarship applications would open on time. Yes, I said. We'll make sure they do. On Friday evening, I found a crack in the farmhouse's old slate roof big enough to show stars. I signed a repair authorization from the trust's repair account and saved the receipt in 3 places. Doing the work felt better than arguing about it. It always has for me. Still, as I locked the front door, I noticed tire marks on the gravel, sharp and fresh, like someone had practiced leaving fast. My phone buzzed, and a text from an unknown number read, "Meet alone, or we bury you in rumors." I forwarded the text to Ms. Patel and the sheriff. Then I called my therapist and scheduled 2 sessions in a week. I added motion lights to the farmhouse and a door camera that sends clips straight to a folder called Quiet Fence. I changed my route to work. I wrote a short statement for myself. I will help responsibly, in writing, with receipts. I will not enable. I taped it inside the blue hutch so I'd see it when I reached for the trust binder. The roofer came Monday. I paid from the repair account and logged the invoice. I met with the school counselor about a micro-grant from the education fund for bus passes to after-school tutoring. Aunt May and I walked the property lines at dusk and didn't talk much. Sometimes healing is just seeing the same ground, safely, again. Ms. Patel suggested a written offer to Victor. If he attended financial counseling and paid current property taxes he'd neglected on his own home, I would consider a one-time documented assistance to prevent foreclosure, capped and contingent on receipts. It wasn't softness. It was a boundary with hinges so no one pretended they were locked out forever. When the door camera pinged at 11:23 p.m., the clip showed a shadow crossing the porch, then retreating. I emailed the sheriff the file and went back to bed. The next morning, I made coffee, opened Grandma's ledger, and started a new page titled, After. I wrote the date. I wrote the word roof and the word tutoring. I wrote, Nora kept going. It felt like opening a window inside my ribs and letting winter air in on purpose. That afternoon, Victor called and said, very softly, "What would it take to end this?" I met Victor at the mediator's office, not the farmhouse, and I brought Aunt May and Ms. Patel because endings deserve witnesses. We reviewed a single page. He would complete counseling, bring tax receipts current, cease the rumors, and contact me only through scheduled meetings. I would consider a one-time, capped assistance with documentation if he complied. We signed, not as relatives making peace, but as adults agreeing to boundaries that could carry weight. The pen felt heavier than any heirloom. I understood why Grandma called clarity a kindness. Outside, in a wind that smelled like snow, Victor muttered that the house never loved him. I didn't answer. Some truths are quiet because they don't need my voice. I drove to the farmhouse and walked every room slowly, palms grazing the door frames the way Grandma did when she checked her work. The new roof didn't sing, it simply held. In the kitchen, I opened the blue hutch and slid our signed summary behind the trust binder. On a card, I wrote, Education Fund launches March 1st. HVAC install scheduled April 10th. Roof complete. It looked like a life that could stand upright without leaning on anyone's temper. The motion light caught a fox crossing the yard and let him pass. I made tea, the way Grandma taught me. Water at the edge of a boil, patience as an ingredient. And I sat at the table that once hosted whispers and voted hands and found it was still a table built for simple plates and honest talk. At the library, I posted a notice for the scholarship workshop and an update about summer cooling. Jaden's mother cried when she read it. She said heat had always been the difference between her boy finishing homework and giving up. I filed receipts for the roofer, the door camera, bus passes for tutoring, a modest grant to the adult literacy program. The ledger's columns grew steady, not dramatic. Boring, I've learned, is how bridges stay up. Aunt May brought over a quilt stitched from Ruth's kitchen aprons and told me to keep it where it would be used. I spread it on the couch and sat for a full minute without bracing for a noise. If you're listening from your own storm, take what helps. Write names and dates. Keep copies. Accept help that makes you stronger. Refuse help that makes you small. Don't sign at night. Ask the clerk for the index number, the bank for the log, and your tired heart for proof of what you already know. Boundaries are not how love ends. They're how love keeps its shape. Grandma Ruth left me a house. Yes, but also a method. List the promises, honor them in order, and let the loudest person be responsible for their own silence. When dusk fell, I locked the door, turned the ledger to a clean page titled Steady, and wrote 2 words in the first line I could live with for years. Nora continued.